Let's be real, we're living in a world obsessed with digital solutions and AI optimization, but what happens when all the fancy tools stop working and you're left staring at a compass that's spinning like Jack Sparrow's? I'm Ryan Kohler, and this is Talent Talk. My colleague Emily Alvarez recently sat down with Randy Anderson, owner of E3 Professional Trainers and a Hall of Fame SHRM speaker who spent 20 plus years figuring out something crucial. If people are screwed up outside of work, they're going to be screwed up at work. Here's what blew my mind about this conversation. Randy says we're facing an epidemic, and I'm talking epidemic proportions of leaders who've lost the art of self-awareness. We're so busy chasing the latest tech that we've forgotten the fundamentals of what makes humans actually function. So here's what Emily and Randy dive into. His E3 framework that engages the heart first, then equips the brain and hands, then empowers the spirit. Why knowing your breaking points and warning signs is more critical than any AI tool. And his 4 magic questions for one-on-ones that will transform your team's productivity exponentially. This isn't about anti-technology, it's about getting the human foundation right so that when we do integrate AI, we're building on solid ground instead of quicksand. If you've ever wondered why all the digital solutions in the world can't fix a team that's fundamentally disconnected, this conversation is going to give you the roadmap back to what actually works. Let's dive in.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us for another episode of Talent Talks. We're very excited today to welcome Randy Anderson. He is the owner and president of E3 Professional Trainers out of Lubbock, Texas. Randy is a recent National SHRM speaker, 2024 HR Southwest Speaker Hall of Fame inductee. And we're very excited to have you today, Randy, to talk about resilience, habit, and the lost art of self-awareness and leadership. So thanks for being here. Super glad to have you.
Absolutely. All that stuff sounds good. I don't know who wrote that, but that all sounds good. I will tell you the only correction I've got is it's Lubbock, not
Oh,
Lubbock.
Lubbock.
Yes.
Lubbock. Well,
Nobody,
she's smart, but she can't speak right.
nobody knows where Lubbock is. It's the biggest town in West Texas except for El Paso, and nobody knows where it is. So
I love it.
everybody knows Amarillo because of country songs, and Midland, Odessa because of oil, and everybody knows of Abilene because of cattle drives. But unless you know about Buddy Holly, nobody knows about Lubbock. So anyway.
Love it. That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you being here, and we're excited to get into this. This is a great topic for us. We're an AI company. We usually talk about tech. We're in kind of a world obsessed right now with digital solutions and
Absolutely.
optimization and
Yep.
and all of that. But in this conversation, we're going to pull away from that and really talk about the fundamentals, right? And what happens when the tools just stop working.
Yep.
And we have a compass, and I would say pretty much most people have a moral compass, but we're kind of in a state where, if
The
anybody's seen
compass is
Pirates of the
broken.
Caribbean, where the
Yep.
compass does this when
Yep.
Jack Sparrow
Exactly.
can't figure out what he wants. It's kind of
Right.
what we're in right now. So,
Yes, I would fully agree with that. And I
yeah,
see it. I see it all over the place. I don't think that's limited to a generation, though it may be more heavily focused in a generation. I don't think it's limited to an industry. I don't think limited to geography. I mean, I don't think it's East Coast, West Coast. I think it's everywhere. I think it's everyone. And you're hesitant to use this word after the last few years, but I think it's at almost epidemic proportions right now.
mhm. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we focus a lot on generations, right? Because we have this large generational split right now in the workforce. I mean,
Yeah.
like 20, late teens to 20-year-olds working alongside, in some cases, like 60, 70-year-olds.
Yeah. 70-year-olds. Yeah. These days. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that creates a very interesting generational divide, right? And different values might be passed along in certain cases. But you've been doing this for well over 20 years in practical leadership. And
Yep.
what kind of got you into studying this framework where it comes to really looking at um, strategic planning when it comes to leadership based in self-awareness?
Yeah, I talked to I've got 2 adult kids and one almost adult kid. 19 is the youngest one, and I talk to them all the time about being self-aware and aware of your surroundings, aware of yourself, aware of strengths and weaknesses that you have, things like that. I'm actually, big on know your breaking points, know your warning signs, know your strengths and weaknesses, play to your strengths as much as you can. You hear the idea of ignore your weaknesses. For some of us, that's just not practical. Like
Right.
we have to do that. But if I spend all my time in my weaknesses, that's really going to break me down mentally. It's going to cause me a lot of stress, which is going to burn a lot of energy. mentally, physically, emotionally, whatever the case may be. And so, as you said, I've been doing this in just a couple of weeks. I don't know when this is going to air, but from the time we record this, actually the end of next week, it will be 20 years that I've been doing this full time on my own. But I was managing salespeople before that, support team for managers. And what I found out was if people are screwed up outside of work, they're going to be screwed up at work.
Right.
If they're on a bad diet, if they don't get enough sleep, if they're ingesting a bunch of junk for their brain, if they haven't read a book in 25 years, if they have bad relationships with their family, friends, coworkers, whatever, that's going to affect their productivity. And so it was not a self-serving, hey, if I quote unquote fix these people,
Right.
they'll make more dollars for the company. But it was something that I really and I got to tell you, I mean, I will be the first to admit, my wife will be the second one to back me up. I have very little mercy. Like I just look at other people and I'm like, hey, you just need to bite on a stick and get it done. But the place where I do have empathy for other people is, man, you could be so much more. You could be
Yeah.
so much happier. You could be so much more productive. You could be so much more influential if you would just fill in the blank, fix your relationships or work out every once in a while or go to bed instead of watching Netflix till 1:30 in the morning. And that kind of became my passion was how do I help people do that? And the
Sure.
the positive byproduct for the American workplace is they come to work feeling better, thinking better, acting better, more rested, more knowledgeable, more excited about their work. And all of a sudden everybody wins. And so that kind of became my passion was can I help people get better? And so thus the name of my company, you already mentioned E3 Professional Trainers, engage people, engage their heart, equip their brain, their back, their hands, software, hardware, right tools, right equipment, right facilities, whatever. But
Right.
also a lot of people would say soft skill training. I'm on a rampage to get that changed to core skill training. Can we
I love
communicate
that. Yeah.
effectively? Do we use our time effectively? Are we being a good leader regardless of positional authority? And then we've got to help them to feel empowered. Hey, you really can do this. You're knowledgeable enough, you're experienced enough, you have enough initiative, you have enough persistence and determination. I believe you can do this. So we've got to engage their heart, equip their brain, their back, their hands, and we've got to empower their spirit. So that's kind of what's driven me over the last really, I would probably say almost 30 years, even though it's been 20 years under this banner.
I love that framework because I agree. I think it's important to follow those steps, right? To
Yeah.
really pay attention to the person when you talk about their heart, really understanding what's underneath behaviors,
Yeah,
right?
because think about that. If I don't engage their heart first, all the training is going to go in one ear and out the other. Hey,
Right,
where's the sign-in sheet? Is this mandatory? How long is this going to last? Well, I can tell that person is not in the training session to learn. They're in the training session because somebody told them they have to come.
right,
But all of a sudden, if I help them realize how you're thinking is affecting how you're living, how you're thinking is affecting how you're working, and just a little bit of a change in that could help you be so much happier, so much more fulfilled
right,
in life.
right. We have to understand what drives people's decisions.
Absolutely.
And also, and this was one thing I was going to ask you, and I think this is interesting because you said something very powerful that if people are screwed up outside of work, they're going to be screwed up in work. I believe that wholeheartedly, and I don't believe that it's necessarily always true. I think there are periods where people obviously have we're human and we have responses to trauma. We have responses to hardships or tragedies in our lives, things like that. And I think those can happen throughout life, right? Things can
Yep.
happen like a death or the loss of a home. That's something that's traumatic. Uh, Bankruptcy, filing for bankruptcy, divorce, any of those things are traumatic. And I think people can act through trauma sometimes when they don't have the tools internally or emotionally to handle certain things. And so I think as leadership, if we notice, and part of this self-awareness, I think has to also be an extension of empathy to say if we notice that somebody in the workplace is has a drastic change of some kind,
Right.
we have to recognize that.
Sure.
We have to
Yep.
be able to say, hey, there might be something else going on there. And instead of jumping to the conclusion of, oh, we need to put that person on a performance
Yeah,
improvement plan
they've
or,
checked out, they're burned out, they've
right.
quiet quitting, whatever it may be, and it may just be a season of life, actually.
Right. And we need to engage them in a different type of conversation, though, because to your point, if they may not want to come to that event where they have to sign in and something, but it might be something that they would have done in the past,
Right.
there might be a reason for that. And we have to figure out what drives their decision or their attitude or their emotion behind something. We don't have to do it in an intrusive way, but if someone is getting into a pattern of behavior or decision making that is turning into something unhealthy, we have to stop and say, wait, why is this happening?
Well, so you hit on about eight great points there, but just a couple of them that I would respond to. One, I've got a presentation on employee engagement, and I talk about we need to know the three great tools that are going to engage somebody. What are their core values? In other words, what
Hmm.
matters most in life? Number
Right.
two, what are their inherent motivators? What really drives them, incentivizes them, or whatever? And what are their aspirations?
Right.
Because their long game may be totally different than somebody else's long game. I don't want to be the president of the company. I'm happy
Right.
in the position I'm in. That doesn't mean I want to be the exact same employee 5 years from now that I am today.
Yeah.
And you said at the very beginning in the intro, we're going to talk about self-awareness, but I think there needs to be some interpersonal awareness
Oh, for sure.
on behalf of the leader, our teammates, or whatever. And so everything you said was maybe we need to react differently. Well, what if that person, so you talked about traumatic events. I mean, the two biggest traumatic events I've had in my life, got fired from my last job with my wife 5.5 months pregnant
Oof.
with our third kid when I started doing this 20 years ago. Fired
Yeah.
because I was the witness to a sexual discrimination claim that ended up kind of coming to nothing, but nonetheless, I was without a job with a wife 5.5 months pregnant. And another one, when my oldest kid got a staph infection and had a near-death experience. He didn't die,
Ooh.
but he was in a coma for a week. He was in ICU. He was in a hospital for 3 weeks, and it just and so people who are looking going, you need to work harder. You need to put in more effort. How about you consider where I am this week and say, hey,
Right.
I'm willing to help pick up and carry the load for you right now because there may be a time when you need to carry the load for me
Yeah.
somewhere down the path. And I just don't know what that's going to look like. Yeah, I've got a presentation I'm working on, and I haven't yet. I've only done it one time because I have not yet gotten where I can tell the story about my son almost dying without crying, and that doesn't look good on stage. But the presentation is, have you had any bad days to celebrate lately? Because when we look back on
Love
our
that.
life, a lot of times the turning points, the flash points, the times when we really became the person we are today was a result of some major catastrophic, I would not have scripted this for
Absolutely.
myself event that helps us to develop the persistence and the determination and the valuing life, the valuing contentment that we often lose in the side of running the race, so to speak.
I would agree with you. I mean, my daughter, my oldest daughter, had leukemia as a baby, and it was the same thing.
Yeah.
2.5 years of treatment, almost losing her. I feel like I learned more about myself in that period of my life than any other time in my life. And I
Yeah.
think we figure out really who we are in moments of adversity
Yeah.
through our resilience and what we're capable of overcoming. But that self-empowerment comes from building, I would say, habits
Yep.
that would build comfort of some kind, that would build repetition in ways that get you through, which
Well,
we're
and
going to talk about. But I agree with you. I think you learn more about how to equip yourself, how to handle the hard things in life when you face those types of adversity. I think way more than the positive things that happen in life.
yeah, so you use the term habits. I like the term rhythms. We develop that rhythm. Hey, no matter what, I'm
Yeah.
going to do what's good for me today.
Yes.
No matter what, I'm going to spend a little time in solitude, whether that be
Yes.
prayer, whether it be meditation. I'm going to spend a little time working out. I'm going to spend a little time, whatever. Malcolm Gladwell in his book David and Goliath, he talks about the advantage of childhood adversity.
Yes.
how a lot of super high performers, brain surgeons, astronauts, things like that, many of them had something traumatic in their childhood that forced that initial persistence, determination, doggedness, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to overcome this, whether it was a childhood disease or the parents got divorced or a parent died or, we moved 25 times by the time I was 18 years old. And they come out differently than the person who had it easy and was the star football player in high school. And then you go back 20 years later and they're still in the same hometown and they're the assistant manager at the lumber yard. And I'm not knocking that. I'm just saying
Oh,
the people we look at and idolize when we're younger, a lot of times when you get older, it's the one that you never thought was going to be that. And I've got a couple of friends that I'm like, I cannot believe that guy has become what he is.
yeah,
I mean, I've got a friend who is a big, big deal in the technology world, and I'm like, that guy, like he's the one who became out of all my friends, he's the one,
I
and
know. It's
and I just
wild.
think, yeah, and I think because they had an uphill climb the whole way, their ability to climb is stronger. It's more developed.
Well, wouldn't you say, I mean, I would say that that would mean to me that soft skills or core skills, as you call them, which I like much
Yep.
better,
Yep.
I would say that that would almost say that or equate that to survival skills, right? Because
Yeah.
resilience is really like a wake up call forged through struggle in a
Yeah.
sense,
Yeah. 100%.
you
Agree
know,
with you.
and I think most people misunderstand um emotional intelligence and stress response.
Yeah, back up just a little bit. I said my son was that sick almost exactly a year before my daughter had gotten a staph infection, and that's what caused my son to be so sick. Unless you think we're
Right.
negligent, like unless you think we're negligent parents with
No, no.
sharp, rusty items laying
It's
around,
so
there's
contagious.
some
I
medical stuff
know.
goes into that,
Yeah, no,
but
it's highly
I,
contagious.
I said to my wife, and so my daughter, who's our middle kid, is very much
Yeah.
me in a little body.
Yeah.
Our oldest kid is her reincarnated.
Right.
And I said to her, it's a good thing this happened to Carly because I don't think Clayton would have the resilience to go through this. And her response was, I think you'd be surprised. Well, a year later, when he went through something worse than she had it, he proved it was just a quiet resilience. Where Carly
Right.
and I are going to shout it out and go, hey, look at us and how great we're doing and how much we've conquered. Clayton's just going to say, hey, what's next? What's the battle for today? What's next?
Right.
And so I think you're exactly right that we really don't know how resilient we are until we have to be resilient.
Right.
And then being resilient helps us to be more resilient next time if we learn from it, if we grow from it. And you hear story after story of somebody whose life was wrecked because they lost a job or whatever and they became homeless. And they talk about how many homeless people have an amazing story. And I get that. I understand that completely. But that resilience and our response to the trauma, our response to the tragedy, our response to the catastrophic event, whether it's a weather related event and my house got wiped away, or
Right.
I lost my job, or we lost a kid, or I lost my marriage, or whatever the case may be. That's when we kind of figure out, Warren Buffett, you don't think of Warren Buffett as being humorous, but he's got one of his greatest quotes. It's only when the tide goes out that we find out who's been swimming naked.
Oh,
And I thought, man, what a great way to look at it. And it's when that stuff happens and we realize, hey, they're more resilient than I thought they were.
right. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I think that's the perfect time to find out when people are thrown in to the deep end and
And,
they
and I
are
and I wouldn't have picked it. I wouldn't have scripted it. I didn't hope for it.
no,
But here I sit nonetheless. I can either go forward or sit and quit. And that's and we all come to a point. If you hadn't been there yet, you must be pretty young. And I got bad news, it's coming because life just gives you that at some
right.
point.
Right. And I talked to someone the other day that said that critical thinking skills can't be taught. They have to be learned.
Grow and develop into it. Yep.
And I agree with that. And I think for most of us, critical thinking skills are learned through adversity
Yeah.
and through trauma, unfortunately, or
Yeah.
through some sort of life
Yeah.
event that we can't just talk our way out of, right?
Right.
We have to like really sit down and think, how do I I have to like really be careful about my next step in this equation because my next step could trigger a next step or a chain of events
Yeah.
that is not great. So I better
I better
really
look at
weigh
the
my options.
long-term effects here. You ever heard
Yeah.
the expression, good judgment comes from experience and experience comes from bad judgment,
Yes.
and so that's, the t-shirt, bad decisions make great stories. Yeah,
Right.
maybe, but I also hope I learn from it and don't make that same bad decision again.
Exactly. And some of us unfortunately have to make that decision
Yeah.
a few times, but
Yeah.
hopefully we
Yeah.
get there at the end.
Yeah. Slower
Um,
learners.
Absolutely. I'm going to switch directions a little bit here because I want to circle back a little bit to this idea of the workforce and the divide of age and
Generations. Yeah.
yeah, generation gap in the workforce because we talk about, and I get this a lot with this loss of buzzwords and trends and kind of what's going on inside of leadership right now, ideas of engagement. And, we want to do, like coffee and donut meetings. We want to do, because a lot of the workforce is still remote. Um,
Yeah.
and there's this very interesting idea of leadership giving into these trendy ideas of like, oh, we'll do like a remote yoga class, or we'll do this, or we'll do that instead of maybe setting some boundaries about things in the workplace or really looking at culturally what the workplace needs. They're just trying to kind of make the workplace like still a one size fits all and not really focusing on critically how they can build the culture based on the values of maybe what the organization should be based on. So foundationally getting back to the roots of what we need to build on. They're
Yeah.
trying to build it still through cameras and screens. And how do we engage that way? What fails about this every time, in your opinion?
As you said, if I want to come back to one point of what you just said, the one size fits all, I think more than ever, there's got to be an individualized connection. And this is going to turn some people off. This may turn you off. I said from the very beginning when COVID happened, very hard to build culture virtually.
Yes.
And I think as we try to do team building or group meetings, or I've heard all the kinds of stuff about, find an icon on your desk and bring it to the meeting this week, and we're going to talk about it. That can go so far, but I think now more than ever, there's got to be that personal connection. And then I turn around and I hear, I was at a place last week and I said, "How many direct reports do you have?" I get 4, 6, 2, 27. I'm like, how can you build a personal connection with 27 people? That gets really hard.
Way too big of a team.
And
Yeah.
well, but then you get into the philosophical argument of flat, hierarchy, I mean, I can see all the sides of that, and that's not what we're on here today to talk about. But the more we can build that connection, and again, I'm going to come back to what I said a minute ago. The more I understand their core values,
Yeah.
the more I recognize their inherent, what I call their, I think there's 5 inherent motivators. The more I understand what their lifelong aspirations are, their long-term key objectives in life, then I'm going to be able to put that in that frame of reference with this project, with their job. Well, I'm big on family. And I just, it's frustrating to me that I can't go to okay, well, if you're big on family, then I would have to think you're big on wanting to provide for your family. One of the
Right.
best ways you can do that is to do your job well and equip yourself to be ready to go to the next deal. I can still tie those things together. And I think, we've gotten the team is more important than the individual. Well, the health of the team, yes. But you're not going to engage a team. You're going to engage individuals to want to contribute to that team.
Right.
And those the shared striving that leads to organizational, or what you might say global objectives. Global sounds a little bigger, but I'm just saying organization wide or team wide.
Right. Right.
And there's a book, an older book called Love 'Em or Lose 'Em, about coaching, and it talks about how do we make that connection? How can we talk to people? How can we get them to connect? There's another book by Dr. I believe his name is Tim Irwin, called Extraordinary Influence. And he talks about put it in relation to their character. Emily, you're late. The policy, the handbook says if you're late 3 times in a row, I can suspend you for a day. Okay, I don't care. Emily, this is very unlike you. You've always
Right.
been very dependable. You've always been one of my most responsible team. See, if I connected to your character, it matters more to me than if I connected to the policies and procedures in the handbook.
Right.
And so to understand and this is extraordinarily uncharacteristic for Emily. Well, maybe Emily's kid had an issue this morning before school, and Emily doesn't want to talk about it, but that's why she was late this morning. Not
Right.
because she hit the snooze button too many times, but because her kid didn't want to get out of the car at school because she got bullied the day before and she's afraid to go back in the hallway. Well, I needed to spend 5 or 10 extra minutes being a parent instead of hurrying to the office. And the bad thing is I was a sales manager before I started doing this. So my
Right.
deal is hit your numbers and I don't care where you spend your day. Go to
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
golf course,
Yeah.
go to long lunches, I don't care. And
Right.
we can't do that for everyone, especially on a production floor or
Oh,
in,
for
in the
sure. You have
field,
deadlines
field
and goals.
services or
Yeah.
whatever. I
Yeah.
I get that. And so I've got a little bit of a this may not be the right word to put it. I've got a little bit of a tainted view on that because as long as you're hitting your numbers and you're not breaking the law, I don't care how you go about that.
Sure.
Um, and so, but I think that interpersonal connection is what we've lost the ability to do. And I don't think cameras and computer screens have helped in that. I think that we've kind of gotten where over the last few years, our friends have become counted on social media platforms rather than on a Christmas card list. And so am I really connecting with people? Am I really taking time to hear their story? Am I really taking time to see what their life looks like outside of work so that I know here's what's going to affect them? I always say, if I know what makes you tick, I'm a lot less likely to tick you off.
Sure.
And
Great
so
point.
but if you figure that out completely, write a book and retire because everybody's trying to figure that out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Well, and you brought up an interesting point about connecting interpersonally, and I'll tell a story because when I was at Applicant Pro, the pandemic hit while I was there, right? And we were all set up to already work remote because we had people kind of all over. But what I would say is, we came from a company that had a very, very, very strong internal culture. And so when we hired based on hiring for that culture. So we didn't really care. We were a tech company, ATS company, but we didn't really care about hiring people that necessarily knew anything about tech, right? Because the whole goal was if we could hire like a bunch of, stay-at-home moms that could do sales, we could hire a bunch of stay-at-home moms that could do our account management and that could do these things. It actually gave us a better perspective on the user experience because they knew nothing about tech. We could
right,
train them on the tech, right? We cared more about could you show up? Could you be a team player? Could you live out the values of the company? Could people stand to work around you every day? Those kinds of things. Could you show up to meetings? Will you turn your camera on?
but
Those kinds of
it's the age-old adage: hire for character and train for skill. Yeah,
1000%. And that's how we still to this day do things. And that's
yeah,
why I tend to have people when we hire, they stay with us for years
yeah.
because there's that cultural fit that we look for. Skills, I can train people into certain skills if we need them to have those. But if it's something that I can give, leeway on, that's fine. I care more about if they're going to fit with me and if I want to work with them
Yeah.
and they want to work with me. So the bottom line is, I think when we hire for values and skills, we have a much better outcome. But for us at Applicant Pro, because we hired that way and because COVID forced us kind of into each other's homes in a weird way, um, you had meetings where people had like, and myself included, my cats were in my lap. We
Yeah.
had people with their kids climbing all over them, and I was fine with that as long as it didn't interfere with the meeting. Like their dogs would be running around. I mean, there was like, you got a glimpse into people's actual personal lives. I knew
Yes.
their kids by first name. I knew their animals. They knew mine, the whole thing. So it actually improved during COVID, our sense of company culture, because we kind of like got this like glimpse into each other's like personal space, and everybody was like happy to interact that way. Um,
Yeah. A word you don't use very your camaraderie.
right, right,
Or
camaraderie.
interconnectedness or intertwined, and all of a sudden I realized, oh, you're a cat person too. I have a cat, and
Yeah,
there was some of
yeah,
that went
yeah,
on as well that we don't talk about at work because
right,
I'm gonna go put my AirPods in and sit in my cubicle all day.
right. And what's interesting was when there were significant structural changes due to a buyout that happened, when that culture went away, even though we were all still remote, when that type of culture went away, not necessarily on my team, because my team, like, we still, through war together, had a pretty strong culture. But when that culture went away, company wise, everything changed. And we didn't have that same sense of camaraderie with the rest of the company. On our
Hmm.
team, we did to some extent when there wasn't interference coming in from, weird stuff happening. But I mean, I think when you hire for culture and different things like that, it becomes much easier to do what you're talking about, which is that, cameras and screens don't really matter at that point, because you're everybody's on the same page living out, because their values internally as human beings align with the values of the company.
Yeah.
And that makes it a lot easier, you
Yeah,
know.
and I've had companies before that, I'm like, if you want me to come in and teach your people to work and 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 work, I'm probably not the guy for you.
Right.
If I'm going to say get your work done and go home and be a parent, get your work done and go
Yeah.
home and be a spouse, get your work
Have
done
the
and go home and work
balance.
out.
Yeah.
And so, and I think as I said earlier, the breaking point, the warning signs, I can tell when I'm getting maxed out. I
Hmm.
get more short, I get more impatient, I get more frustrated. My brain is sidetracked by work all the time. I know what the warning signs are.
Right.
And if I don't do whatever's necessary to push the reset button, whether that's to go for a long weekend somewhere or whatever the case may be, then I should expect I'm going to hit a breaking point. And that's
Right.
nobody's fault but mine because nobody else can tap out for you. Well, I have to do it. It's what's expected to be in my job. Okay, but you don't have to stay in that job. Well, but I can't go backwards in life. Okay, then what you're telling me is your lifestyle is more important to you than your fulfillment or your
Right.
contentment.
Yeah.
Because you could change to a job that you have to travel less or take less work home or work fewer hours, whatever the case may be, even if it means a
Right.
cut in pay. And so again, that self-awareness of what's most important, because I can put down the quote unquote the Sunday school list. Here's what sounds good for me to say out loud. But
Yeah.
in reality, what is my life proving is most important to me? I always say your kids, especially when they're little, they're a good way to tell what your core values are because they don't care what organization you put your name associated with or who you're contributing to. What do they judge by? Where you spend
Where
your
you are.
time. Yep.
Yep. Yeah. And I think what you just described is the actual meaning of work-life balance.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I'm kind of on a rampage to get that phrase struck. It's not
Work-life balance.
work-life
I can't wait
balance.
to hear,
It's
what are we
it's
what are we
it's
calling it?
life balance
Life balance.
because work is a part of life. It's just
Yes,
life
you're right.
balance.
You're
And
right.
and when we look, when people say work-life balance, what they're insinuating is some magical equilibrium between the number of minutes I spend at work and the number of minutes I spend at home. And what I'm saying is there are times I got to spend more time at work. There
It's
are
true.
times when I'm taking 3-day, 4-day weekends. I mean, we're kind of at a phase in life
Yeah.
with aging parents who are in poor health. Had a kid get married in May, got another kid getting married in November. By the way, that is not good financial planning to have two weddings that close
Thanks,
together.
guys.
But we did a good job of keeping them apart in school, so tuition didn't come at the same
Right,
time.
right.
But and so this year does not look the same for me as last year did. Last
Right,
year, I mean, I was at the airport and hotel all the time. This year, not as much because I'm having to do some stuff on a personal front. But
right.
and because I'm self-employed, because of what I do, I have the freedom to do that. Now, I will say this, it has meant a significant difference in income this year. But my level of fulfillment and contentment and me living out what I've said is my core values over time, this year presented an opportunity to do that. And I could have shown my young adult kids who are fixing to start their own families, oh, work all the time. It doesn't matter what happens with it. Well, I want them to see how we're treating our aging parents who are in their 80s so that if I live that long, they treat me that
Right.
way. I want
Yeah,
them to come visit me,
exactly. Lead by example.
Yes, exactly. I want to model for you what I hope to see years to come.
Right. I love it. Awesome. So, couple of follow-up just questions before we are, about to sign off, but I haven't actually asked anybody this. You went to SHRM Nationals this year. You presented this topic. And I'm curious to know because did you attend anybody else's sessions when you were at SHRM and
I did not. My
didn't?
travel schedule would not allow me to do that. So I was in
Okay.
and out very quick. Yeah.
Well, I was just curious if you've been obviously you've talked to other people, but what has kind of been the general feeling that you've gotten from the let's say the consulting industry around so far with HR? How has the current climate been? What has kind of been the biggest challenge overall you've seen? Because we talked about this before we started talking today, but we're an AI company. I've said this, AI is part of it, but it's more the psychology surrounding AI and the conversation, not necessarily the software that is the problem. It's the way we're talking about it at work, the way it's
Yeah,
being
when you have
implemented.
the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world and
Right,
the Bill Gates of the world talking about, a human wage because everybody's going to be out of work in a few years, that people hear that message.
we're scaring the hell out of each other.
It's very much so. And you're
Yes,
causing people, it's like yelling at a kid playing baseball. Don't swing at a bad pitch when they're walking
right,
up to the plate. Well, that kid's going to swing at a bad pitch.
yes,
Don't miss the layup when they're on a fast break. They're going to miss it.
yeah,
We're scaring people so bad that they're screwing up. So they're like, you know what? Let's just get a computer to do this for them because they're screwing up anyway.
yeah,
Let's bring the
yeah,
best out in them.
yeah,
Let's have that human spirit that cannot come from a written program, from coding.
yep,
Let's code the humans to do their job better, more creatively, reach out to the customer and make them feel special and all. And, I've really, a couple of the big swings I've seen, especially over the last 5 years, it went from business as usual. In fact, let's back up longer than that. I'm old enough to have gone through September the 11th and saw what that did to business. I
oh
went
yeah,
through '08 and I saw what that did to the American workplace. You
yep,
see sort of 18, 19, but then especially when COVID came along. And so it's kind of, I don't think we're ever going to go back to what it was before '08. Before '08, and I've seen this before, I was already in management at that time. Managers managed, they had oversight. Well, after '08, we got lean. All of a sudden, managers have their own stack, their own list, their own list of customers you've got to take care of, as
right,
well as oversight. And then we come and we go to the virtual world, and now we're back to the hybrid world, or we're back to virtual only, or back to office mandates, or whatever the case may be. And over the last, 5 years, you saw it was very much a buyer's market.
oh yeah,
The employee had the leverage. Well, in the last depending on where you look and what industry you look in, 6 to 12 to 14, 15 months, now it's swinging back to the employer. And because of constricting economy, because of different variables there, people are like, I don't want to leave. If I had a conversation an hour ago,
yeah,
we had a guy who was ready to accept a position and he ended up backing out because he said, I have stability where I am. I can't run the risk of going somewhere new because I'm going to be the last one in, first one out. I think
mhm,
we've seen that. And so you take the mix of, really, I wouldn't even say nationwide, I would say worldwide economy, pandemic, things like that, and mix that with forthcoming, oncoming, rapidly approaching changes it, from AI and different things like that on how we do business. I mean, my wife and I are frustrated right now. I mean, I'm a late 50s guy. I'm an old school. I'm a non-technology guy. I've told you that already.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and I go into a restaurant and I got to order my food through a kiosk. No, put somebody behind that cash register and let me tell you that I don't want onions on this.
yeah,
I don't want to have to pick it on a screen.
yeah,
And so, but they're causing me to conform because if I'm going to eat their food, I'm going to order their way. And so it's just like everything else. A lot of us just don't like change. It's not about the change that's occurring. It's about the fact that there is change occurring.
Right.
We're certain my job is going to go away, but yet they keep adding stuff to my desk for responsibilities. I'm like, and always the age old joke, who else would work so hard for so little money?
Right.
They can't get rid of me because I've got too much on my desk right now, too many
Right.
unfinished things.
Right.
And so I think that as you add in, as you said earlier, the 20s and the 70s and everything in between, and as much as there's generational divides there, I think there's also some personality divides because I know some
Oh, for sure.
70-year-olds who become acclimated to technology when they figured out they could see pictures of their grandkids. It didn't matter if I was 20, 40, 60, 80, I'm still going to hate
Yep.
technology. But I learn enough to be able to do what I have to do. And so that's what I think most people, most instances, they're going to figure out, they're going to learn, they're going to climb the hill they've got to climb to do and be what they want to be.
Well, what's interesting about that too is we're talking about like, grocery stores having, self-checkout and
Right.
Walmart's checkout and ordering foods on kiosks and stuff like that. It reminds me back in, because I'm of the age where, I mean, we had a computer, a first generation Mac computer, Apple computer in my house when I was a kid. And so I was introduced to technology very, very young. And we had a computer lab. I was in a private school from kindergarten through, well, all through school. And we had a computer lab. And so I was introduced to technology, coding, computers, typing from like kindergarten. And when they started introducing games like Solitaire and Hearts and Minesweeper, all those old games, remember? There was a reason for that. They were teaching people how to drag and drop. They were
Yeah.
teaching people how to click and unclick. They were teaching people how to do those mechanisms on a computer.
Unlike my generation that learned Atari and it had absolutely no value
Right.
whatsoever.
Well,
So
actually it
yeah.
did. It did. The old school video games had the same types of like you hit a button and it had the same like there was a consequence and an
Right.
but the bottom line is this is the exact same thing as far as I'm concerned with those types of kiosks and different things like that. It's introducing these things to kind of like bring us into this idea of, oh, how do we integrate this into a way that will help people be a little bit faster, but also we're going to introduce it into a way that seems fairly innocuous, right?
Yeah.
Self-navigation in cars is another big one when they started putting nav systems in cars. So again, even with these, they've made this so easy. My 4-year-old friend's daughter can pick this up and use it probably better than I can in some cases because they're not afraid of it. They can just pick it up and know that this is so easy to use. They understand it. And so again, I think we're entering into this age where we're kind of being like predisposed to like understand how to use these forms of technology to get us comfortable to it. But I just did an episode the other day or a few weeks ago with someone about AI ethics. And again, I know we weren't going to talk about tech, but there's good and bad to this. And if we want AI to be human, we have to design it and program it with empathy
Yeah.
at the very least. Because I do think it's a powerful tool to be used in some ways, but I think there are some ways, like in recruiting, you absolutely cannot use it. Like, look what happened to Workday. So I think when we're talking about internalizing our core skills and life balance and things like that, yeah, AI can maybe help with some organizational stuff for that, but we got to do that hard work ourselves. There's no
Yeah.
question. And we've got to put rituals and habits in place. And I believe in workplace rituals that are meaningful as well, that
When
are
I think
around values.
the workplace rituals and workplace rhythms where we say, because you look at professional athletes
Yeah.
and it may not always be in spring, but quote unquote, when they go to spring training, whenever that is before, they're doing a lot of the same drills they were doing in eighth grade
Oh, yeah.
out on the school playground. And I think, again, let's go back to what I said. And after '08, when managers became more busy with task oriented tactical things instead of strategic things, it's been easy to ignore spending time on training, spending time on coaching, spending time developing individuals,
Yeah.
closing gaps, identifying blind spots, and helping them to realize what those are. And that's easy to say, well, if I had a computer, I wouldn't have to deal with all that. And my response is, you're right, you won't. I agree with that. I saw an article the other day that said something like 40 some odd percent of people in their 20s would rather have an AI manager.
Can you believe
But
that? I read that
but
same article.
but let's take it back to what we talked about on the fast food, ordering the fast food. Some of it is personality driven
Right.
because the same crusty old farts like me that are griping about having to order at a kiosk were the ones griping a few years ago about the guy behind the cash register didn't iron his shirt and his pants are down around his thighs. And, so we're just going to gripe, right? Like we're just going to be mad about something. And, at least that kiosk doesn't offend me by the fact that it, didn't use good grammar or etiquette or whatever,
Right.
but it's not a human. And so there's just the forced change. When I didn't pick it, I'm going to have a little bit of resistance to it, most likely. And I think that for me to realize, okay, am I mad about the change, or am I mad about change?
Or am I mad that I wasn't included in the conversation
That's what,
about the
yeah, that's
change
what
in
I'm
the
saying. I
first
mean,
place? Yeah.
is it territorialism, or is it that I really think this is a bad idea? I mean, and I could, an example this week, again, I don't know when this is going to air. I don't know when somebody's going to pull it up in the archives and read it, but this week was the week of the Cracker Barrel folly
Oh,
that went on.
can you believe all that
And
too?
and
I
so,
know.
that was not just about change.
I know.
That was about the changes. And we've got to be self-aware enough to know, okay, I'm just maxed out and everything's making me mad right now.
Right.
I'm just frustrated
I've
by
hit
fill
the
in the blank.
threshold.
Right. And this person has triggered that in my brain right now.
Yep.
We talked about habits a little bit earlier. That trigger, that cue that it initiates a response.
Right.
I've got to have enough self-awareness and emotional intelligence to go, I'm not going to give a $5 response to a 50-cent problem
Exactly.
because I will be
Thousand
overdrawn
percent.
really fast if I do that.
I 1,000% agree with you.
Um,
1,000%. Well, last question. One ritual or um I know you don't like the word habit, but
rhythm.
rhythm that you swear by that leaders should adopt immediately if they could tomorrow or today even. One that you swear by.
I,
It's
I
like
will
your
tell
go-to.
you the thing that made the biggest difference for me was when I started doing one-on-ones on a weekly basis.
I am a huge
Yeah.
HR. You got to do one-on-ones with your people if
Yeah.
you or encourage your managers to do one-on-ones.
And I'm hearing them called all kind one-to-ones and
Right.
check-ins and pulse meetings and whatever you want to call it. I don't care what you want to call it.
Yeah.
But connect with your people individually on a regular basis. Create that rhythm. If you got 27, it's probably not going to be every week. And I'm not talking about a, hey, how you doing this morning? I'm talking
Yeah.
about let's sit down and talk about, and my four magic questions are, what have you accomplished since we last were together? What are you currently working on? What do you need my help with? And what do you expect to complete between now and the time we meet again? The beauty of that is the next time we meet, the answers to question number 4 last time should be the answers to question number 1 this time.
Yep.
And if not, it triggers the accountability mechanism. But I would say if people could make time to do one-on-ones or one-to-ones and connect with their people individually to help them achieve, to help them engage, to help them contribute more, you will see the productivity of your team go up exponentially.
Yeah, I love that. Again, huge fan of one-on-ones. We do them, have done them forever. And I would even go so far as to say, let your team manage their own one-on-one times.
Yeah, and that's really a growing trend is let flip the script and let them drive the conversation.
Yeah, let them even schedule it, manage it. If they have to reschedule it, it's their responsibility because technically it's their meeting.
Yeah.
They own that time with you.
And
And it's
what I found was if I had to can at first, they didn't really want to do it. After about 3 or 4 weeks, they loved it so much. If I had to cancel the meeting, they were begging me to reschedule it. And I was like,
right,
okay,
same.
they
Yeah.
see the value in this. They've got my undivided attention for 30 or 45 minutes.
Yep.
if they're going to pose me with a big question, they know to give me a day or two notice so I can read an article or two or get my thoughts together or whatever the case may be. And I'm just telling you, that created an exponential growth curve within my team and our
Yes.
productivity.
Yes, absolutely. I love it. Well, Randy, this has been great.
I've
I'm
enjoyed
so
it.
glad we connected, and I love this topic so much. Randy Anderson, owner, president, E3 personal or
Yep.
professional trainers,
Yep.
e3professionaltrainers.com. You can find him on LinkedIn. Any upcoming speaking gigs coming up anywhere?
Lots. That's what
Lots.
I do. Lots, but most of them are private, like contracted with an individual company. So
Gotcha.
probably the easiest place to catch me if it's a come one come all is either on our webinars, which they can find out about on our website, or at like a SHRM conference or something like that.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure, and can't wait to talk again soon. And thanks so much again for being here.
Well, I
It's been
appreciate you hosting me. I've enjoyed the conversation as well.
awesome. Well, thanks so much, Randy. Have a great rest of your day.
All right, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Okay, that conversation between Emily and Randy just hit different, and I'm still processing these massive insights. First, Randy's right that we're dealing with epidemic level self-awareness issues in leadership. When he says if people are screwed up outside of work, they're going to be screwed up at work, that's not harsh, that's reality. You can't compartmentalize being human. Seconda's E3 framework is brilliant in its simplicity. Engage the heart first, because if you don't, all your training goes in one ear and out the other. Then equip their brain and hands with the right tools and skills. Finally, empower their spirit so they believe they can actually do this. And third, those 4 magic questions for weekly one-on-ones, pure gold. What have you accomplished? What are you working on? What do you need help with? What do you expect to complete? Randy's Write This will make your team's productivity go up exponentially. Here's my challenge. What warning signs are you ignoring in yourself or your team? What would happen if you started doing weekly one-on-ones and actually connected with people individually instead of treating everyone like a one-size-fits-all solution? Huge thanks to Randy Anderson for sharing his wisdom. Check out E3 Professional Trainers. Come and connect with him on LinkedIn. If this conversation sparked something for you, hit subscribe and share this with a leader who needs to hear Randy's message. Sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is get back to basics. I'm Ryan Kohler, and I'll catch you next time on Talent Talks.